Record to this. Hello and welcome to Occult Academy, episode 2, where hopefully we've got Steve James in the picture and not just me for reasons unknown. Hello, Steve.
Hey up, mate. You all right?
Hello. I'm all right. So just to introduce myself as well, my name's Nathan Lucius, and here, just to this is my good friend Steve James. We do a lot of projects together. We do a lot of researches and presentations together. And we've even written a book together because, frankly, we're awesome. So, go and buy the book. It's called Fake Awake, and it's brilliant. Well, I'm going to say that because I want you to buy it, and I think Steve agrees. Right.
Rightly so.
Well, so like, if I don't blow my own trumpet, nobody else is going to either. Right. So episode 2, we're going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about protests, petitions, and stands. If we're let's, but before we go into that, because I think we've got a bit of a different opinion on this one. So this is going to be good because I think not completely different opinions, but I think we'll hopefully set the example as to how to be civil even though you might disagree about something, and how that shouldn't actually wreck friendships and stuff like that. So again, I think it's going to be perfectly civil, rational. I think we've got good arguments on both sides, and I think it'd be worth a chat. But before we do that, I've got an announcement, Steve.
Oh, what is it?
Oh, it's quite dire, unfortunately. I've got to get it off my chest. Apparently, the pair of us are now Satanists, for reasons unknown again. So just to give you a bit of a background to this, because our channel is called the Occult Academy. Those people who are afraid to delve into the occult because they think it's evil have automatically designated the pair of us Satanists, because we dare to utter and look into things that, the elites, or whatever you would like to call them, would rather us not look into. So I hate to break it to you, Steve. Looks like we're the bad guys now. I mean,
Well,
personally,
looks like we've been robbed.
I don't do any satanic rituals or anything. In fact, I don't even, believe in the devil or anything like that. But I just figured we'd start with that. So,
We've been rumbled, mate. Ha, 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 ha,
oh
ha,
no, I know, steady, steady. That's the opening ritual. So, right.
ha.
So, right. Shall we, as we do delve into the occult, not a cult. We're not a cult. We are delving into the occult, which means hidden. That which has been hidden from view, which goes back to the word oculus, which refers to the eye being covered. So let's see if we can demystify this one yet again, just for any new listeners or anyone who just happens to pop into the show. Please, Steve, can you explain that the occult, what it is briefly, and what it definitely is not, in terms of a subject and us delving into it? What have you got for us?
Well, gosh,
I know
it's
it's a hell of a question.
yeah, it is because there's so many things we can mention about it. But let's keep it fairly simple and on the level. First and foremost, for anybody listening, the occult is not about evil, but it's not just purely about good. It's about human nature and the human psyche, which could be summarized by the term the microcosm. And it's also about the wider world, the universe, the cosmos, the laws of nature, and the laws of science, and how we interact as human beings from the seat of our consciousness to the to in the arena of the universe, the universe obviously being the macrocosm. So the macrocosm is what the occult is all about. But as you correctly said, from the word occult from ocular or occultari, there's
Yep,
another I believe that's a Latin
Latin.
term,
Yeah,
meaning the eye or to see, i.e. to see, to reveal hidden information. That's what we're doing, and that can cover a very wide range of things, from spiritual natures, metaphysical natures, um, um, alchemy. This is all part of the occult. And again, if we ignore the occult because it has such a diverse selection of topics and understandings to it, what we're doing is we've got a very, very small opinion on how to navigate through the world as human beings. If we ignore the occult, we are ignoring a huge branch of understanding.
just
So,
a bit.
yeah. So we all need to embrace the occult to understand it. Like I said, it's not just about evil. It's about, I mean, we class ourselves as good guys, de-occultists, because what we want to do is reveal darkness so we can then fix our sights upon it and fix that. And if we ignore the darkness, what we do is we miss a golden opportunity to correct all the ills in the world. So the occult is massively important.
Brilliant. I mean, that was a brilliant all rounder, mate. I mean, I don't really have much to add to it apart from that. I mean, apart from going into individual subjects, which is kind of what the channel does. Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure why it's got this reputation for being evil. I mean, where does that come from? I mean, clearly it's a misnomer. It's a misconception. Potentially, is it a constructed conception given to us by the people who don't want us looking into it, which is the ones who are actively practicing and using the information for themselves. So, is it the ruling class, as they like to convince us that they are, that is, putting a negative slant on it, so that things like Christianity and the New Age automatically dismiss it as being, some kind of devilish evil practice and evil information that mustn't be touched and things like that. I mean, I'd love to know where the hell it comes from, the idea of that it's evil. My issue with it, I guess, is that it shows me the ignorance of people. So anybody who refuses to even look into it, and I know a fair few, and unfortunately they tend to be the religious types mostly, they refuse to look into it simply because they hear the word occult, and it's like a bell to them. It's like, oh no, I'll never touch that because that's evil. And so you question them. It's like, well, can you tell me why it's evil, or it's to do with witchcraft? Well, yeah, there are elements of witchcraft within it. But then, define witchcraft. I mean, isn't a witch a herbalist largely? Isn't a witch somebody who practices the pagan rituals, not necessarily the bad ones? Somebody who's in tune with nature, somebody who looks for cures, somebody knows how to deal with ailments and things like that. I mean, it's again, is this another witch burning campaign?
Yeah,
Which
I
I'd,
think.
I'd,
Do you know what I think? On top of that, as well as especially religion or religious groups, church leaders, etc.,
Mhm.
hide all evidence of the occult or banishing it by declaring it to be something you shouldn't look into.
Yeah,
I think there's another thing that often gets discounted is I think human beings, and I'm just generalizing, but many of them choose to accept it as being evil because that means they don't have to bother themselves to look into it and
yep,
to do some important self-study fundamentally because they're lazy and apathetic. Not again, I'm generalizing, but I think this is another reason why people fail to look into the occult.
yeah. I mean, again, I can't really disagree with that. But I mean, let's take something really simple in occult terms. The seasons. I mean, the annual seasons, the sun's journey, across the sky again, in arcs across the seasons. I mean, this is both common knowledge. I mean, everyone's aware of the seasons. Everyone's aware of, the different stages that the sun goes through in its annual cycle. But
Mm.
what they seem to overlook is that this is I'm going to say archaic information that goes way back in time, and the connotations linked to that, the knowledge of the stars, the knowledge of this cycles and sequences, and the effects that it's got on nature. That's just basic observation, right? So the occult utilizes that under its banner, which is, it's hidden from view because there's a lot more information. When you look at this stuff, it's quite magical. I mean, you look at the different effects that the seasons have. You've got the four horsemen of the apocalypse, for example, which is the four seasons, the four winds, the four pillars.
Mm.
There's a lot of things to look at, and it's not that, it's the I guess the herald of the end time necessarily, but it is the herald of the sun's journey. It is the herald of the seasons. It is, and so to me, that's just basic observation. It's basic science, basic knowledge, and yet it comes under the banner of the occult, which most people are probably wouldn't even think about. They wouldn't even consider that to be an occulted subject.
Yeah,
I mean, Christmas and holidays, things like Easter. They've got massive occult pagan traditions behind them. I mean, huge. I mean, and it's not even a straightforward swap from tradition to tradition. It's an amalgamation of a lot of ancient cultural, bits of information and knowledge and wisdom that's all been compiled and evolved over time, to give us what we've got now, which is an amalgamation of different holidays from different times, time periods. It really is that simple in a lot of cases, you know. So it's not. It's how do we dissolve that misconception? I mean, apart
That's a
from talking
difficult
about
one.
it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but essentially we do have to talk about it. We've got to get ourselves out there, not just us. We're just two men in a big wide world. More people need to acknowledge, come to an understanding, and educate other people about this information.
Yeah,
Essentially, none of it is hidden, but it's all hidden at the same time, and that's the funny thing about it. It's almost it's a bit of a conundrum because
yeah,
occult information is open to anybody, especially with the advent of the internet and podcasters and books. There's lots of information available, but it's not necessarily something that people will look into because even though it's publicly accessible at a high level, people refuse or fail to accept it or acknowledge it. Therefore, they're just keeping themselves occulted in their own mind.
yeah,
And as I kind of alluded to earlier, if we don't fully understand a situation, the emotions that are driven by that, which feed into our actions, are going to be incomplete. So that triangle, I'm going to do a shape here. There's a
uh-oh, oh, you're triggering them now.
I am going to get, I'm definitely going to get called a Satanist for doing this, but that, but I don't have any other triangular shaped object in the room, so I'm just
Yeah,
showing the relationship between three interconnected components. And if that was a house of cards, if one card wasn't there or fully established, that house of cards would collapse. And that's what society is in a sense. We're acting upon limited information because people don't accept or acknowledge the occult. And again,
mm,
generalizing occult information. So we have got an incomplete knowledge, which leads to incomplete actions in the
yeah,
world. That leads to chaos. That leads to disorder. And as I've said, because the human mind, the human psyche, the microcosm is directly linked to the macrocosm, the greater, the wider world, well, there's going to be a problem there and something will happen. And we just have to look out the window today to see that the
yeah.
world could definitely have room for improvement.
Oh, I think that's understatement of the century. I mean, yeah, but I like what you said there about they've occulted their own minds. Effectively, they've chosen to stay in darkness, right? They turn away, they shy away from the light because, in order to see the light in a lot of respects, and again, this isn't. I'm probably going to be accused of all sorts of this as well. But you've got to operate within the dark to find the light. You've got to see how the darkness works. If you're afraid to step into it, then that's a fear state.
Mm,
Well,
yeah.
what's more negative? Looking into a subject that, for all intents and purposes, just universal natural sciences and natural laws, or choosing to ignore something to the detriment of yourself and others. So to me, ignorance is the worst, of the two options there. It's to ignore something. Again, if you've got a problem and you ignore it, it's not going to solve the problem. And
No.
so if you're refusing to look into something because you're afraid of it, that in and of itself is negative. That's a very, very negative thing. I daren't look into that, so I'm going to leave it. Well, all right then, but then you're afraid to face your own fears. And in this instance, with this particular subject, it just seems a bit crazy, really. It's
Mm,
just, and yeah, of course, if you delve into parts of again, the umbrella term, the occult, yeah, there is things in there that can be misused, because all knowledge can be misused. It's like, if it's I use the example of a knife. Well, if somebody presents you with a knife, that can be good for, I don't know, cutting bread,
mm,
spreading butter on your bread. It could be good for carving wood. But equally, that knife can be used for malevolent purposes. But the knife is just a knife. It's just a tool, and it's the same with the occult. It's just a tool. It's information. It's knowledge, and if you know how to use it properly without abusing it,
Mm.
no problem. And even then, it's only when you start delving into the really dark stuff like demonology and stuff like that's where you start running into problems. And I wouldn't go anywhere near that. I wouldn't even be qualified to discuss that. Never mind
Mm.
delve into it and discuss it on a channel. So this it's I think I'm prattling on at this point. But anyway, have we laboured the point, do you reckon, for
Well,
today?
do you know what? I would just add to that by saying most intelligent adult human beings, in fact, most kids probably appreciate that eating your greens, your vegetables, plenty of water, as opposed to, let's say, crisps, chocolate bars, sweets, and fizzy pop. Most people would know instantly that having a nutritious diet based on organic foods straight from nature is better than processed artificial junk. What goes in your body, we are what we eat. Obviously, we're going
Yeah.
to be healthier if we eat natural products, balanced natural products.
Hmm.
That's the same with the mind. If we don't accept information that's based on nature, such as the occult, because everything about it is relating to the way nature operates.
Absolutely.
If we're not accepting that into the diet of our mind, what we're doing is we're polluting our brain with the artificial junk that's fed to us by the TV, by social
Yeah.
media, by all sorts of different platforms and sources. And that's what happens. We've got a society who have basically got a mind of a fabric laced with a fabric of artificiality. We need to get back to nature in the mind space, which means embracing and understanding and accepting the occult.
Yeah. I mean, once again, what can we really add to that? It's an observation, isn't it? It's an observation of nature, an observation of society. Society, psychology, even. Certain parts of your psychology could be deemed dangerous if it's known. If you can look into your psyche and figure out how to manipulate somebody. You can figure out how to coerce somebody to your will and things like that. Well, okay, that could be considered to be occult psychology, for example. But is it bad, or is it good to know how it works, because then we can learn from it? But anyway, I think
Yeah,
that's we've I think we've covered that enough. So needless to say, the occult is not evil, well, certainly not the aspects that we deal with on this channel and on our various groups and meetings and presentations. We certainly don't delve into any of that negative stuff. But equally, it is nutrition for the mind, as you've put it, and it's brilliant. No, if you want a healthy mind, body, and spirit, you've got to feed it the correct foods. You've got to know what to look for, and the knowledge, the wisdom. I'm going to call it wisdom because it is ancient wisdom. It's been passed down for generation after generation after generation. It's been held as highly sacred because of the value of the information. To such an extent that often it's hidden from us because the the authorities, the rulers, whatever you want to call them, uh, deem it too sacred to be left in the hands of the peasantry or the mundane and things like that. So, but anyway, we don't agree with that.
yeah,
I'm not falling to fear. I fully agree with the likes of Mark Passio when he says that he's here to demystify the occult, because we're now living in an age where we do have the internet, we do have inquiring minds that want to know more. We've got a fantastic network out there that wants to know how things work. They want to know what it's all about, and one of the only ways to do that really is to look into the information and delve into it and figure out as much as you can.
yeah,
So,
agreed.
on that note, shall we go into tonight's topic of discussion,
Yeah,
so actually before we do that, so people might be thinking, well, what have protests and petitions and making a stand got to do with the occult? Well, the thing is, we're going to look into the psychology of it, the sociology of it, and how it can be both effective and ineffective. It can be used against you. It can be weaponized. There's a lot of stuff there which again, if we embrace it, if we look into it properly from a balanced, objective perspective, then we can see things like natural law, and again another occulted subject, which we're gonna really hammer into a lot. You know, natural law is a very, very important aspect of what we do. If we look at the natural law aspects of protests and petitions, etc., and how it's abused effectively, how our rights have been taken from us, and we're not aware of it, or how information and tactics, psychological tactics, are being used against us to control the flow of information, to control people's behaviors, to control effectively the flow of society. So if we want to know how it's linked into the occult, it's basically an assault on your natural born rights and freedoms. So let's delve into that. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'll my presentation up again, just for the listener and the audience. It's an incomplete presentation, but there's enough on there to get us started and hammer that home. But I'll plug that up now and get it on share.
Brilliant.
All right, just bear with me.
Yeah, no probs. So for the listener, you're going to get a fantastic Steve James presentation. Well, I'm gonna float your boat here, mate, because you do some absolutely fantastic presentations. You do. I mean, you've always had a good response to them. So there you go.
You're very kind. Right, I'm trying to get this on.
I think you've got to share the screen, mate.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't cut you off this time. What? In the meantime, I'm taking that off because I'm bloody warm. That's better.
Right, it's saying on the screen that sharing is not turned on.
Oh, right, okay.
Send request.
Right, okay. In that case, allow. There you go. Done. Try it now.
Thanks.
There you go. Teething issues. We have to do. Do we have to? We should have brought your guitar. We could have had a little intro.
I think it's not come up yet.
Not yet.
All right, here we go. Where are we? Is that the one? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
That's on, is it? Yeah.
It'll come on. Yeah, it seems to be a bit slow at first. So just if the audience can just bear with us, because there seems to be a bit of a delay. I don't know whether it's the internet or Zoom or whatever it is, but something delays it a bit.
Okay. Well, that's this is the logo of our Occult Academy venture. I don't know if you've got that on any other outlets at the moment, but for people listening in, this is the Occult Academy. This is our book, Fake Awake, written by Nathan Lucius, who you can see on the screen. Hello. Alongside this glorious book cover. Did you design that, by the way, or did you have a large part of that? Yeah.
No, I designed the lot. Designed it, edited it, published it, wrote it. Well, obviously there's contributions in there from other people, but the front cover, that's me. So that's me robed with a pair of tights over my head to keep the face, and then a globe superimposed over it just to show the let's say the evil influences on the world. So. There's plenty of subjects in there. I don't know whether anyone can read from the front cover there, but there's a lot of different subjects: psyops, psychology. I mean, there's even a bit of an autobiography in there if anyone's not too depressed to read that. But anyway, largely dealing with the subjects of natural law and how we can apply it in our life, and how basically it's been, I'm going to use the word ignored again, widely. To our detriment. So anyway, so that's the book. So, there you go. So Fake Away, that's our book, Steve. So
brilliant. So obviously we want to demystify the occult along with several other presenters on the subject. Yeah. I must admit, even though I've got a contribution in there, I think the book is excellent. I'd almost say it's a must read, a must buy. So get it, guys. Demystify the occult. But let me delve into the presentation, which controversial, you could say, because as you can see from the title, protests and petitions are piss poor and pitiful. Well, I don't know what your take on that is, Nathan, but obviously that's going to raise a lot of eyebrows and probably have a lot of criticism from fellow truthers. What do you think?
Well, all right, let's say it for what it is. You've obviously researched into this in order to pull a presentation together. You're a very intelligent guy, and you're entitled to your opinions. I mean, one of the things that we are fighting for here is freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, freedom of expression, and you know, and the right to be respected for that. And so, show me what you got. Convince me. Convince me. And again, I'm probably going to agree with a lot of the points you raise here, but I'll balance it out at the end as well, and just say
Yeah,
why I
brilliant.
would, not necessarily disagree, but I think there is a good aspect to them as well. But anyway,
Yeah.
go on and
Well,
hit us.
I must admit, I'm never short of being slightly controversial. So, this is kind of fitting in with, several of the presentations I give of a similar theme. And again, I don't try to insult people. I do try sometimes to be a little bit provocative, because if it's provocative, that gets the old brain cells whirring
Mhm.
away. But this is an overview explaining why the freedom community will never achieve success until it changes its understanding and approach to generating the effects it desires. And that ties in slightly with what I said, 5 minutes earlier, when thoughts drive emotions and emotions drive actions. So if we don't have sufficient information, we'll never be able to generate the correct emotions to deal with whatever subsequent actions to are required based on that level of understanding. So I hope that makes
Yeah,
some sort of
yeah, it
sense.
makes perfect sense, mate.
Oh, gone
Oh,
the
we've
wrong
gone
way.
backwards. Uh-oh, we've gone
Oh,
backwards, mate.
gone back in time.
God, I hope not. I don't want to do the last five. Well, maybe some of it was really fun, actually.
So what I've done is I've just basically put up, there's many protests that have been going on. This one's based around the northeast, a fairly recent one, but I thought it was interesting because part of that poster, which was available online, said our mission is to illuminate, and I can't see what it actually says. That
Truths that often
truth.
remain hidden. Well,
Yeah,
isn't
thank
that
you.
isn't that very, very esoteric and occult based? I mean, well, you
Yeah,
couldn't really get a much more occulted statement than that, actually. But there you
yeah.
go.
So that's all we aim to do as well. As a de-occultists,
Yeah.
we wish to reveal information that's hidden. That's all.
Yep.
So let's move onwards. This is based. This the presentation. A lot of the information kind of has come from this presentation I done a few weeks ago. It's called the Occult Academy Battle Picture. Now, I would admit that this is probably the most boring presentation anyone can see. I don't know if you've seen it, Nathan, but it's 45 minutes of me in monotone voice. You can see I'm dressed in combat fatigues, simply because what I'm hoping to achieve by this is to give people a firm and but thorough understanding of what's going on and why and what we can do about it.
Yep.
And essentially, this gives the understanding that natural law, freedom under natural law, should be the aim that we wish to achieve.
Yep.
And you can see here at the bottom, I've put selection and maintenance of the aim. Now, if I can't imagine many people listening in are combat veterans, but if you were, you would understand that phrase. It's what's known as the first principle of war. So if we're at war, we need to have an aim to in order to know what we're doing. Otherwise, we'd be running around like headless chickens. So selection and maintenance of
Absolutely.
the aim needs to be achieving freedom. And the way to achieve freedom, as I'm sure you would agree, is understanding and applying the principles of natural law.
Absolutely. 100%.
So, in order to get to that aim, what we need to then do is have information, and that requires an education. And I've termed it a precision education because there's lots of distractions out there that are affecting the truth community. For example, I mean, I'm just pulling things at the top of my head. Who shot Charlie Kirk and why? Um, what's this orbiting asteroid that's going on? That's supposedly a spaceship.
Yeah.
Lots and lots and lots of conspiracies and this, that, and the other. Well, all I would say on that is JFK was shot many, many years ago, and that's still a conspiracy to this day. that still hasn't been entirely, it's been dissected a lot, but we still haven't got a
Yeah.
firm answer. Therefore, how long are we going to concentrate on conspiracies for? Another 60 years? But what we need is a precision education based on occult knowledge, which is focused on what's known as objective morality and natural law. And both of those topics are covered in Fake Awake, and these are
Yeah.
two topics that we talk about exclusively.
Before you continue it now, just on top of what you're saying now, I mean, we often get stories thrown at us like this to, I think, deliberately, to derail us, to keep our attention focused elsewhere. It's probably nothing. I mean, obviously with Charlie Kirk, I mean, it was shot, but I didn't even know who the guy was until it was all blasted across the news. And I've got no problem with the guy. I didn't, but again, I wasn't aware of him. I'd never heard of the guy, and maybe I've been living under a rock. But then suddenly, when it's everywhere and everyone's got an opinion about it, it's like, oh, what's going on here? David Icke's got this saying, and it's very, very apt, which is, if it comes out of nowhere and it's suddenly everywhere, it's the agenda. And it just seems
Yeah,
to me that, and again, this satellite, I don't even know what they call it, this spaceship that's supposed to be hovering around the Earth. I mean, we had this was it the dark satellite or the black satellite or something,
yeah, yeah.
again, and that was all debunked many, I mean, even that one got my attention at the time as well. But, too many
Yeah.
distractions. If you're aware of the distractions being used against you, it kind of makes you a little bit skeptical when you look at this stuff being hammered out, en masse in the mainstream, even in conspiracy circles. It's like, well, okay, why do they want us to see this? It's either because they're trying to get something into our psyche to manipulate us with, or it's trying to divert our attention away from something else, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, it's just to chip in with that. I'm going to let you.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers,
Um,
Mark.
the last part I've got on the bottom there is, in order to develop a precision education, not just for you and I might add,
Yeah,
this is for the wider audience. We all need a precision education. The way to obtain that is by developing a battle winning mindset. So, for the benefit of the viewership, I was once a former soldier at a high level.
yeah,
One important aspect of anybody who's, in any aspect of, let's just say, warfare or something, some sort of challenging situation, because I'm totally against war and totally against the military. I'm just going to caveat that a battle winning mindset, the being able to have a resilient, focused mindset is massively important. You can be the fittest human being on earth, but if you can't be bothered to step foot out the door because you ain't got it upstairs, then you're going nowhere. So everything is about the mind. Battle winning mindset is something that we need as a body of people, the freedom movement, but it needs to be focused with courage and determination. And even though some of the things that we need to learn, if you like, are probably not sexy and cool, such as obtaining information about the occult, well, that we need to focus and apply courage and determination to get to grips with that, because that's what's important. And as I've said, my battle picture kind of explains that in no uncertain terms. I mean, like I say, it's massively boring, but it is a great way to at least get a grounding of what we need to kickstart a mental revolution, because that's what needs to happen.
I don't think necessarily that it is boring, mate. I think you undersell yourself. Again, I've always been an advocate of your talks. I mean, I met you through one of your presentations, which I was absolutely, I was quite stunned by it, because a lot of the presentations I'd seen up to that point, even though, we had a lot of famous people coming in and doing talks for us,
Mm.
and many of them were just missing the point. Not all of them, but, and then you came along and I'm like, oh, this guy actually knows his stuff. And then you mentioned Passio and you brought natural law into the equation. I'm just like, oh, I need to know this guy. So so there you go. So yeah, I don't
Thanks,
think.
mate.
Well, again, it's deserved. I'm not just I'm not virtue signaling. It's a deserved compliment. But is this information boring? I don't think so. If we've got a worldwide problem that needs fixing, and this is how a military tactician would approach that situation, I think it's valuable information. I think it's something that we
Yeah,
should all be delving into, and at least, okay, whenever we might not be military experts or anything like that, but I think we do need a good grounded foundation level of information to go forward with it, you know?
Yeah, I
So,
appreciate that. And
yeah,
just to finish off on that,
yeah,
what I have applied, even though there might be officers from Sandhurst at a high level say, oh well, that's not fully how we would, do our concept of operations. But what I've done is I've applied military type products onto a planning objective, which has come up with us, the objectives that we need to focus on. So this is a
yeah.
military grade product that I've come up with. But I'll move on from that
Cheers, mate.
because we've talked about freedom. Well, this gives an idea of what freedom is. Freedom is a line in the sand and it being washed away with the first tide. Freedom is not given, it's not a gift of the government. It's the natural born status of every living man and woman on the face of the planet. Of course, this isn't how we're brought up to believe, but freedom can only be taken away, which it is, and it's being done right under our noses as we speak. Because this is what the government are doing. I'm not a fan of the government. You've probably noticed that.
I never noticed, Steve. I can't imagine why that might be, but okay.
So the government are progressively washing away our freedoms. And if we don't do something to retrieve it and to hold on to it as best we can, well, it's going to be gone forever. So this is a pivotal moment in time.
Yeah. Again, look, I mean, you've covered something there, which this is the basic fundamentals of natural law, which is, your first principle is sovereignty, do no harm. And your second principle is the right of self-defense, which, in other words, if somebody tries to take something which doesn't belong to them, that's an act of harm against you and your sovereignty. And what who gave the government permission to take away our freedoms? Who gave the government permission to give us our freedoms? Are they born better than we are? Are they somehow different species that have been granted demigod status on the planet
Mhm.
over us? I don't think so. I mean, they're
Yeah,
just humans as far as I can tell. I mean, whether whether they're shape-shifting reptiles or something like that, who knows? Don't know.
yeah,
But from what I can see, they're just humans like you and me, and they don't have the right to take our freedoms. They don't have the right to give us freedoms. These are our natural born rights under natural law. That's it. Very
yeah,
simple
exactly.
concept. Very
Yeah,
simple.
exactly. So, exactly right. But let's move on to the next slide, I guess.
Yeah.
Essentially, because we are not free, and I mean, there's a lot of evidence which we can put to showing that we are not free. That makes us slaves, and I'm sure most people will recognize the image from the Matrix, where Neo is offered the blue pill or the red pill. Obviously, what I would say is essentially the truth movement need to take another red pill because many people have awakened and they know that something's not right in the world, but we've kind of stagnated and we kind of losing our grip on a lot of information that we need to take on board. Like I said, occult knowledge. But speaking of the government, many people would say, well, the government governed by consent. Now, that in itself is a logical fallacy because if we consent, why are we consenting to be governed? If we're consenting to have somebody authorizing what we can or can't do, then why don't we just remove that ability if we are consenting to government?
Right.
If we can't consent because the government's saying no, well, then that doesn't work, does it? That's not governing by consent. That's just a logical fallacy to euphemize slavery. But here's another euphemism, the word democracy. Democracy is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. And this is what Morpheus, the magician, said to Neo, the fool, in his opening um, uh,
Dialogue.
yeah, yeah. The fool, if we took it as a tarot card, the fool
Yep.
goes out wandering in the world, carrying very little with him, and a little dog by his side, kind of walking around with his eyes closed tight. But anyway, just like everyone else, you were born into bondage and kept inside a prison that you cannot smell, taste, or touch. It's a prison for the mind. And I'm obviously just quoting the words of Morpheus in the film The Matrix, but that is what the human race is. We are in a prison, a mental prison. We are in mental bondage, and the game is that tight that most people don't even understand it. It takes quite a lot to deprogram people to come to that understanding, and that's again another principle of what we need to do with occult information to show people that they are actually in bondage.
Can I add something else to that as well?
Yeah.
So when you say, government by consent, so the way that I understand it, and again, this is all comes under the banner of natural law. You cannot logically, rationally consent to something unless you understand what you're consenting to, right? So in order for you to do that, you need to be fully informed. Not only do you need to be fully informed of that before you can give your consent, but it has to be non-coerced, right? So if somebody presents you with an agreement or a contract or a deal or whatever, and they say, just sign that and give us it back. Okay, well, if you do that, you're a fool. I mean, quite literally, you're a fool. If you just sign it and give it back to them and say, yeah, whatever, I'll consent to that. That's not really consent. It is stupidity. It is. I guess ingrained into society now as an acceptable way of doing things because I think we've been massively subdued, you
Mm.
know, kept in the dark deliberately, and so this is how I mean, they're very clever manipulators in government. They're very clever. They've got spin doctors. They've got the media to push it in any way they need it to be pushed to convince people that they are free, to convince them that they have the choice. But if you look at democracy, what is it? Do you want pre-selected dickhead in the red tie, or do you want pre-selected dickhead in the blue tie? Both of them will have slightly different ways of doing it to keep the illusion going, but the agenda is what is going to be pushed either way. It's the same agenda given to them by their puppet masters and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Government by consent is an illusion. And the sooner people realize this, the better, because you can't end a bad system without first understanding why it's bad in the first place. You've got it. I think we mentioned on the Eric von Essex podcast yesterday. In order for you to fix a problem, you first need to understand what the problem is. And the problem here,
Absolutely.
the problem worldwide, and I'm sorry to get in between the presentation, but the problem worldwide is slavery. This is about slavery. We are not free. Our minds are imprisoned. Our bodies are largely limited by where we can go, what we can say, what we can think. Our opinions, we've got to self-censor. Well, if those things are now forbidden, if they're limited, if they're taken away from us, then we are enslaved.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
slavery. The only solution to that, and I know that you're completely on board with this, is freedom. And then people say, well, what's the solution? I've got the solution. You've got to be positive. I've got the solution. It's taken down the banks. I've got a solution. It's taken down blah, blah, blah. Right. No, the solution is fundamental. It's morality. It's decency. It's consideration for others. Right. Because without that, you've got no freedom. In other words,
Yeah.
you continue to be a slave, even if it's just complete mental entrapment, things like that. Anyway, back onto your presentation, buddy.
Yeah, no bother. Excellent explanation. Let's move on to the next slide. And again, uh, just for yourself and the listening audience, this is a presentation still, in its infancy. It's not quite finished, but some of the opening slides I'm okay with at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, I was
But
going to say, just take it as far as you want to take it, and then we'll discuss it from there. I mean, I'm sure that there'll be plenty more opportunities. We can go back into it and stuff. So just take it as far as you want to take it, and let's.
sure. All
Yeah.
right. Well, because I've put a rather controversial title about protests and petitions, essentially, we're going to have a look at what a protest is first and foremost.
Yeah.
So, can you read that in the box there? It says protest.
Yeah. You want me to read it here?
Yeah, it's just I can't see it.
It's very tiny on my screen. So it says a statement or action expressing disapproval of or an objection to something.
Right,
How
brilliant.
was that?
Okay, so that's brilliant. Thanks, Nathan. So we know what the sort of textbook definition of what a protest is,
Yeah.
but what I say, this is my understanding. This is how I would define a protest. And again, this is controversial, but I call it a regulated outlet of expression for butthurt slaves. simply because
Love it.
when we protest on the street, as you can see by this gentleman with the red speech bubble, he's given it, big licks to the police. Whose streets? Our streets. Well, the police are saying the same thing. Whose streets? Our streets. But then above them, you've got the global elite, the psychopaths, the people in positions of authority. Whose streets? Our streets. Well, who owns the streets? It's certainly not the slaves. Slaves never own anything. Most of the slaves on planet Earth, most people under democratic forms of governance and beyond are mental slaves. We're in a form of mental slavery. So I say it's a regulated outlet. Why? Because the global elite or the government give us permission to run protests and permission. They give us permission. So therefore, if they're giving us permission to do so, they must have analysed that if we can do that form of action, they're not going to be able to be in a position of vulnerability due to our actions. So they're giving us a regulated activity. And I've also said it's an expression for butter slaves. Go on, I'll let you speak.
Well, no, I mean, just so one of the things that I like that you do and I do as well in my presentations, or whenever I write something, I'm a bit of a hound for definitions, and people say, well, we don't need the definitions. Yes, you do, because a lot of words are misused, they're misunderstood, they're mistaken, right? So again, this goes back to ignoring the meaning of something. If you don't know the definition, then in theory you can misrepresent what you are saying using certain words. So let's look at the wording of it. A statement or action expressing disapproval or objection. Right. I mean, in terms of, are we going to come to petitions as well? Because the meaning of that, yeah. So I won't go too far into that. But again, it's almost like asking permission to disapprove. It's a statement. I disapprove. I object. All
Yeah.
right. Well, noted. Sod off. I mean, that effective. I mean, I've been to quite a few protests, especially during 2021 and 22. I think I went to a few then as well. And as much as, well, again, I won't go into that, but it is one of the things that you kind of get the impression of it's you are largely ignored. I mean, it's almost like you're a nuisance, which is a good thing. I would say that as a good thing, but you're a nuisance. They just look at you as, oh, they're at it again, But don't worry, at 8 o'clock will come and they'll go home, and that'll be the end of it, But anyway, so it's a
No, not at all.
Yeah, I like definitions. I think it's important to express this stuff
Yeah,
and to
exactly.
understand it properly. Because if we don't understand the definitions, then again, what we are saying effectively is it's misused, it's misunderstood. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is an outlet of expression. So when I say an outlet of expression, generally when and I'm generalizing here, I'm not saying everybody, but we tend to express through the limbic system, the animal brain, when we attend protests. Why? Because it's emotionally charged. They can get quite angry, at times violent. I'm not saying particularly with truthers, but certainly protests can get violent in some instances. Why? Because it's highly charged emotionally. With rationalizing these events through our emotional aspects of our brain. We're not thinking with the higher mind, with the logical mind. And again, it's a regulated outlet. But I use the term butter slaves. Why? Because we've been cheesed off to the point where we're going to go out in the streets and we're going to point the finger of abuse. Where does this expression point to? Well, it's either an empty building, such as Whitehall on a Saturday. Nobody's going to be there to listen to us chanting on and singing our slave songs. They're just, we're shouting to empty buildings, walking around, hoping to catch the attention of passers-by. But ultimately, a lot of the outlet of our expression is focused towards the police. So I'm going to move on to the police on this slide. And it's the same image, but this is ultimately, if we we're trying to bring information to the police and to hopefully get the police on side. but largely the police couldn't care less. They're trained to deal with and switch off to emotions. They're listening to us shouting and chanting, blowing whistles, banging gongs, and waving banners. They've seen it all before. They saw the Saturday before. They saw another protest. They're used to it. It's just switch off. They're blank. I'm sure you've been to many protests yourself, as I have, and tried to speak sense to the police.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
literally,
absolutely.
it's like talking to a brick wall. These people are brain dead individuals, order following lunatics, and they'll not think twice about cracking protesters over the head with a truncheon if they get the opportunity, squirting them with tear gas or pepper spray, or just carting them off so they can get their quota of arrests done to meet with whatever business demand they've got.
I will say one thing. It's probably the exception to the rule. One of the ones in London towards the end, when things were starting to cool off with the whole,
Yeah,
you know, let's say events of 2020 and 21. There was a group of them across the road from us. Like it's almost like I don't know whether we're going off duty or whether but we just basically finished and we were going home, and one of them shouted over to us. He went, "I'll listen to you." And the
really.
people that were with me, one of them went, "Yeah, it's a trap, don't." And he went, "No, I'm serious." He said, we're not going to arrest you." He said, "I'll listen to what you have to say." He said, "Tell me." He said, "Talk to me." He said, we're not going to arrest you. Tell us what you've got to say." And I mean, I thought it was quite novel. I mean,
Mm.
if they all had that approach, maybe they would be on the other side of the line. But again, the fact that they are enforcing the will of the government, that in and of itself to me is enough of a warning signal to send to anyone. It's like, look, they're not there to serve the people. They're not public servants the way that they are servants, but they're not serving us. They serve the crown corporation, which
Yeah,
includes the king and parliament and everything in between. So let's dispense with any illusions. The police a lot of the time. And again, I'm not making a blanket statement. I'm sure there's some decent blokes there that have probably gone in with the best of intentions, but largely police, it's like an armed force of thuggery, isn't it? It's like a
yeah,
paid band of mercenaries to keep law and order, according to the Crown and Constitution. That's what it is.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So they've made their choice. I think there's a bit of a dark triad attraction within the police force. I think it attracts by default authoritarian types, the ones that like to abuse power, the ones that thrive off it. And to me, that's the wrong kind of people that we need protecting us. These are not
yeah.
white knights in shining armor. These are, you know,
I,
armed to
I
the
would just
yeah,
I would just say left-brained order following numpties. They're basically
yeah,
brain dead. They need a serious amount of information, education, and healing in order to get these people to have a balanced brain. They're
yep,
massively out of balance, just as the average soldier was. And I mean, I was a soldier for most of
yeah,
my life. Soldiers, I work with the police enormously. All of these people in of themselves are top guys, soldiers and police. Everyone I've spoke to and worked with and known as personal friends have been amazing blokes. But when it comes to obeying their orders, sadly, that's what they'll do. Like robots, like dogs, will just react to the orders that they're given. And I mean, the health emergency from 2020 proved that exclusively that these people will completely switch off to what's right and will follow orders to the letter. But
yeah.
I'll move on from that. I mean, there's loads we can do with in terms of explaining the mindset of police and the military, but protests usually have a number of competing ideologies, as it says here, and a variety of actors, some of whom act in support of the state, the police, for example. And I've termed these brainless idiots. And as I've said, they're more than happy to use violence upon people they don't know over issues they care nothing about. And they're probably on overtime rates anyway. But we'll move on.
It's
They
like
often
payday for is it?
ignore
It's
us.
Sunday rates.
Yeah, exactly. If they're drafted in from out of the area, they'll be getting hotels and all sorts. So,
Yeah,
but that brings me on to, well, who really owns the streets? Well, it's not us. It's not the slaves. It's not the police, it's the aristocracy, the ruling elite, the trillionaires, the billionaires, the millionaires, the people with sway in society and how it's governed and run. So these people are laughing hysterically at both of the groups, the dogs who enforce the policies and the people who are clueless as to what's really going on.
Now, you just mentioned dogs there before you continue. Again, I get a lot of my information as you do from Mark Passio. He is a former Satanist. He's not now, but he was in the Church of Satan, and he saw basically saw through it. And one of the things that he said he witnessed is the way that they used to. So if they had a meeting or if they had like a get together, or they would have the police on guard, and they would mock the police as they were guarding them, referring to them as their dogs. So they're hounds. They'll do as they say on command. I mean, what does that say? That's not me saying that. That's not Steve. That's not Mark Passio saying that. That is how for want of a better word, the higher ups in society see the police force. The police force that's defending them and pushing their agendas and pushing their diktats and their will. They are not a respectable profession in the eyes of the people that are running the show. They are using these people as glorified guardsmen,
Mm-hmm.
and they see them as beneath them, as dogs, to attack on command. That's how they see the police. And again, that's not me saying that. That's how they see it. Anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly touch on that, when I was in the army, we were actually they used the same expressions. I'm not saying the global elite did, but people above us, our hierarchy, would use the term "unleash the dogs," and I mean that's why
Yeah.
soldiers wear dog tags essentially. But
Yep.
I'm digressing slightly. Just to read what I've put at the bottom there. The protest is a political tactic to keep the livestock subconsciously subdued and mentally enslaved, because we can continue entertaining the masterclass on our hamster wheel, or we can develop a battle winning mindset based on precision education, focusing upon developing rights and freedom by means of a mental revolution via the hidden body of knowledge known as the occult, which is, of course, what we want to educate people with
Yeah.
in more detail.
I like
We
that, by the
said,
way. I like the way you've presented that. A mental revolution. I
yeah,
like that.
I
I
mean
like
that's
that. Yeah.
fundamentally what we need. We need a fresh outlook at our natural state of mind in this world.
Yeah.
Something which I mean, I think that's what it is. It's going to be a revolution one way or another, preferably a mental one, because if it's not a mental one, it's a physical one. And one way or another, there's going to be a revolution. But freedom is a
Yeah.
state of mind, and we need to unleash our mind upon the world by coming to a much deeper understanding. And if we're not free inside our minds, because we are continuing with a concept that the government, our masterclass, have given us the authorization to do, i.e., protest or petition, then we will be subconsciously enslaved, because we've already kind of worked out our position in the master slave dynamic of that relationship. We've accepted the fact that we're slaves because we've accepted that they are our masters. And our masters have said we can protest, so that's what we do. Well, I mean, if I was, I was in the military, and if I was staging some sort of objective, we wouldn't then ask the enemy what they would allow us to do so as not to offend them or to challenge their authority. We would do something that would surprise them, something that they weren't anticipating or expecting, because then it has an effect upon them, and it dismantles their ability to assemble and to react accordingly. That's what we need to do. We need to be like military statisticians or tacticians even, and come up with a plan that destabilizes our opposing force, which is at the moment the authorities who are telling us how to live our lives.
No, I mean it's not just they're telling us to live our lives. I mean, I think they've got us on autopilot now with algorithms. I mean, it's basically the algorithm is defining your wants and your behaviors, and it's very, very clever the way they've done it. I mean, effectively, the elites have now taken a step back and put AI in charge. All they've done is program
Yeah.
it, given it a set of rules and codes, and said, right, do that any way you please, bring us the results, and it's working that way. I mean, it's without triggering the hell out of people. You know, respect the enemy.
Mm, mm,
Look at it from their mindset because their objectives, their methods appear to be working. They're getting results. And the problem
mm,
is they've been getting too many successes lately, and they're just steamrolling the head of it. And it's largely because of what you're showing us here. Freedom is a state of mind. Heaven and hell is
mm,
a state of mind. When people say life is what you make it, okay, there's a few caveats with that. But if you look out into reality, into society, if you perceive that as a negative, fear-based reality, you are going to conform with that. And I know that because I was in that trap for a very, very long time. It took me a lot of work on myself, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of, I did the shadow work multiple
mhm.
times. And one of the things that keeps people enslaved is fear.
Yeah.
Fear, and you try and yeah, of course, it's a big scary world out there. I'm not saying, it's not. Of course it is. But if you can take that fear head on, look at it and say, right, what am I really scared of here? What's the real problem? And then if you really dig into it, again, it goes all the way back to freedom. I'm afraid that my freedoms and my rights to my freedoms and my sovereignty is under attack. That is
Yeah.
when I will put my foot down and say, no, we're not doing that. Non-compliance. I'm not complying with evil taking away my rights and freedoms. This is so
Yeah.
so it's essentially freedom is a state of mind, and a lot of people are tuned into the frequency of fear, which is
Yeah. I
keeping them which
agree
is keeping
entirely.
them stalled and stood down and held back. And unfortunately, we've got to snap them out of that. And it can be done. Can be. I did it largely. Again, I'm not saying that I'm fearless. I'm not. But compared to what I was like a couple of years ago, yeah, I think there are tricks to this. There is a way forward, and it's a mental mindset. All
Hmm.
is mind.
Yeah.
Principle
Precisely.
number one, all is mind.
Yeah.
There you
Like
go.
it. Well, speaking of fear, one thing I learned massively in the military is fear is conquered through knowledge. So it's many
Yeah.
scary situations in the military, as you can imagine. Everyone's trying to kill each other for a kickoff. Well, how do you combat that? Well, you need superior knowledge. I mean, if you're up against an enemy force, if you have got knowledge of their tactics and their techniques, their weaponry, the methodology, the terrain that they employ their tactics upon, then you've already give yourself a little psychological advantage. And as a result of that, you've got less fear when you do, yeah, face violent encounters. But back to the mind state, we've by petitions and protests, we have subconsciously accepted on our minds that we are the rightful property of somebody else, i.e., we are slaves. If we don't own ourselves, we are slaves, even if it's just in the mind. But to become free, society needs to break free from the illusion that government is necessary. And that's another thing that I will quite often hammer home is the fact that the authority of government is in fact an illusion. It doesn't exist. So
I mean, the only way that it does exist is if people give credence to it. If people acknowledge that and they give it they justify it, right? In
yeah,
their own minds. It's like, and then that becomes second nature to people. It's like, oh well, why are we doing that? Because it's the law. Why is it the law? Because the government said so. Oh right, okay, I'll be a good little slave then. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Is it right? What happened
yeah,
to that? What happened to is it right? Because if it's not, why are we doing it?
exactly.
But again, so
Well, this brings us back to morality as well, because if it's not right, and bear in mind, this is why we need a mental revolution, because if we stop and think and analyze it, even a school child would think, well, actually, none of this government authority thing is right. None of it is morally right, but we'll do it anyway. Why? Because we're trapped in the illusion. And as I've said at the top of the screen there, the government believe that everyone should have this illusion of freedom. They give us the illusion of freedom, and we're kept under a form of mind control to obey their commands. But freedom, as it says here, is not a gift bestowed upon us by other men, but a right that belongs to us by the laws of God and nature. And of course, that's not my words, that's Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers. And love them or hate them, whatever your opinions of the founding fathers, there was an awful lot of wise words came out of the mouths of these people in that generation. And of course, we can use these to come to an acceptance. Yes, that still stands today. The government do not own us. They do not dictate our rights, our birthrights to have freedom, but they manage to take it away because we've allowed them to, because we're not free in our own minds. Freedom is a concept that is often associated with personal autonomy and the absence of coercion.
Yeah.
It is the ability to act, speak, or think without external constraints or limitations. Freedom can be seen as a positive value that promotes creativity, innovation, and progress. It is a fundamental human right that is enshrined in many constitutions and legal systems. Sadly, however, the government seem to have totally disregarded this notion, and many fellow citizens have had their God-given freedoms infringed upon and violated by other human beings who have imposed restrictions upon us in their attempts to become gods on earth. So that's a long statement, a bit of a mouthful, but that kind of summarizes a lot of what we need to know about what freedom is and what freedom isn't.
I think that's absolutely very well put, actually. The ability to act, speak, and think without external constraints and limitations, and the absence of coercion. Again, it goes back to, are you fully informed about what you're doing? Are you genuinely really consenting, or are you just waiving your rights? A massive difference. I mean, it's very good. Just incidentally, for anyone who is watching and they find any of this information useful, I mean, please feel free to quote that. Take photographs, take screenshots of the slides, information, use it. Please distribute it freely. Just all I would ask is that if it's a presentation from myself or Steve, if you would kindly just give us a bit of credit and just say quote by Steve James or Nathan, and just things like that. That'd be great. But
yeah,
brilliant, well said, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Or even if people join the Occult Academy on Telegram, that's some of the work that I present goes on that. Again, it's freely available. Use it.
Oh, mate, you're prolific. I got to. I mean, you are prolific on that group. I mean, and it's not just a case of spamming the group with text. It's all of it. I mean, it's valuable. It's well written. It cuts deep at the heart of the subject. I mean, you really, really hammer away at that. So again, if anyone wants to, please join us on the Occult Academy Telegram group. I'm sure I'll figure out eventually how to stick a link at the bottom of the video that you're watching. Please feel free to join that. It is massively educational. Again, there's nothing evil going in there. There's no secret pacts, no secret societies, secret handshakes, or passwords or anything like that. Just come along, have a look at the information. If you don't feel comfortable in there, that's fine. Leave. Thanks very much for your attention. But I don't think you would leave. I think you'll find it massively useful, informative, and educational. I mean, we do have a very good community in there at the minute. Again, largely thanks to yourself. The information goes down very well. There's a lot of agreement in there. There's a lot of people saying, right, this is the stuff we've been looking for. This is how it works. You're right, and then they'll contribute themselves to that. They'll add their own parts to that, and then people will put up videos that goes into the same stuff, and it's thriving. Get yourselves on there.
Yeah.
Get yourselves on there. Or failing that, just keep watching our channels. There you go. How about that?
Yeah.
So they'll get our presentations one way or another.
Yeah, exactly. We've mentioned the word coercion. I mean, that's part and parcel of how government fundamentally operate, coercion. So we'll probably explore what that word means in more detail. Let's see what else I've got going on here.
Brilliant.
I can't read all of that because let's see if I can move that. Oh yeah, I can move that.
You got it.
All right, I'm just going to read this out. The government is an organization which a group of people enforce other people to obey their commands or suffer consequences. No person can rightfully own another person, yet the government claim ownership rights on practically the entire population. And now they expect us to have digital ID to assist them with their totalitarian enslavement plan. And they rely upon mind control to do this by creating highly complicated legislation and ritualized ceremony to manipulate seemingly intelligent people. The lie becomes assimilated by an obedient society, and because it's too big to comprehend, we lose cognitive function, rendering us even us unable to act as sovereign beings in a state of self-ownership. And again, that's quite a long-worded statement, but we lose cognitive function. And one of the ways that we lose cognitive function is simply because, as my previous presentation about the battle picture demonstrated, they use tactics that are known as cognitive warfare. They've waged war on our cognitive function. And of course, it's had a massively detrimental effect upon us as freedom fighters, because we are essentially combat ineffective as a result.
Can I add to that as well? I mean, again, the cognitive function part of it. So one of my main interests at the minute, and it has been for a long time actually, is I'm going to call it occult psychology because I think it is largely information they don't want us to understand. And you've just mentioned there cognitive function. And so when you look at the brain, so the way I explain it to people, you've got your triune brain structure, which is your your R complex, right? So your fight or flight responses, your basic survival instinct. Then you've got your mammalian brain on top of that. So it's the more developed part, the more evolved part, which is the emotional center, which is, it's fear, love, hate, joy, all of that stuff, but largely affects your mood, your approach to things. So on top of that, you've got your prefrontal cortex, you've got your human brain, as some would call it, the most developed, the most rational side of your brain, the logical part, the one that's, your most creative part, even the higher cognitive functions are within your prefrontal cortex. So then if you divide that into your left and your right, and again, your left hemisphere corresponds to your right hand side of your body, and your right hemisphere corresponds to the left, and so there's a correlation there. But if you find yourself in one extreme of the left part of your brain or an extreme in the right part of your brain, what you find is that you have a mental imbalance there. You are by default in a mind trap. You develop cognitive biases, which impedes or affects your perception of reality. So when you go out into reality, if you're stuck in a right or left brain imbalance, you're not going to be looking at things rationally. And again, I've got a presentation I can go into on this at some point as well, and I'm quite happy with it, which it explains a lot. But what I've found is that the trick then is to try and bring ourselves back into balance. Forget the extremes. Let's stop thinking in extremes. Stop thinking in echo chambers. Stop being stubborn or rigid. Stop being naive. Again, on the other part of the spectrum, on the other part of the dialectic, stop being naive. Stop believing everything you hear. There's a balance to be attained here. We could look at the teachability bell curve as well at some point, which again shows that the best way to look at information is to be open-minded but discerning, investigative but not rigid. It's about being the teacher and the master, as well as the student that's constantly seeking the information. But it's about genuinely going and finding this information, figuring out how it works. So again, just bringing it back into this, freedom is a state of mind, and if our brains are out of balance, we are not perceiving reality properly. Therefore, our behaviors are going to reflect that. And this is where you get things like personality disorders, mood disorders. This is where we get anxiety and depression. This is where we get things like, narcissism even. It's a personality disorder because people are out of balance. Their brains are out of balance. And a lot, big pharma will have you convinced that, the way to fix that is to fill yourself full up of medication and other concoctions of whatever the hell they put in it these days. And okay, that might help you to deal with your emotional side of things. It might help you to process stress a little bit easier, but it doesn't fix the problem. And the problem is, just as you put it there, a loss of cognitive function. You know, the truthers, truth community, freedom fighters, whatever you want to identify them as, they will often say to me and each other, we're open-minded critical thinkers. And unfortunately, some of them are, some of them genuinely are. We've got some very good minds out there and they're doing the work. But I would say the bulk of them, they take that and they repeat it ad nauseum, right? So it's something that it's like a catchword to them. It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm a critical thinker. Okay, what do you mean by that? Oh, well, I don't believe anything that's on the news.
Mm.
Right, okay. So then what? Oh, well, then the opposite must be true. That's not critical thinking. That,
Yeah.
in fact, that's sliding straight into a bias. That's sliding straight into one extreme of your cognitive function. It's again, this is all very, very relevant, and it's very important, and it can be fixed. This is the massive, overwhelming positive statement to be taken away from this, Steve. Everything you've discussed here can all be fixed. This is all fixable. All it requires is the will and the intent to do it, to take the initiative, to take the step. Take the blindfold off, step into the light. Again, without
Yeah.
going too much into that, because it'll
Well,
go off topic. But there you go, mate.
yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you there. I mean, I 100% agree that the bulk of the freedom community need to address certain issues. And as
Yeah.
I've discovered, precision education is our battle winning formula. We need to have the right mindset to drive an education across because, like you've said as well, everything is achievable. This is a winnable war, very winnable, but certain things need to be done to address that, which is achievable.
Well, so as you've
Uh,
already said, it takes the will to act. It takes, I mean, I like to refer to it as conviction. If you apply conviction, you are dedicated, you are focused, and you're hell bent on getting that task complete. And again, it's got to start within. If it's something that you don't want to do, you're never going to achieve it. If it's something that's not important to you, you're never going to do it. So realize what the problem is, understand what the problem is, and then you'll find your conviction will just develop overnight. It'll be there. You'll find it.
yeah.
It can be done. It can be done.
So, what part of this education is to understand what freedom actually is? And I know we've covered it to a fairly large extent, but in terms of a short statement, freedom is the power or the right to act without hindrance or restraint. And also, I've kind of capped that off by saying it's also associated with liberty, autonomy, and free will. So, are we acting without hindrance or restraint? Is anybody? And the answer to that, I would say, is definitely not, because there's always intervention by the government because we're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
So, that's what freedom is. If we can't act unhindered, then I'm afraid we're not free. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, or should I go on to the next slide, Nathan?
Yeah, I would. Well, again, I don't want to stop the flow of your slides, but I would. I mean, again, I agree with that. The other thing that I would add to that is with sovereignty comes maturity.
Mm,
I'm not on about being stern or overly serious. I'm on about a mature mindset. That doesn't mean nothing. You can't have a sense of humor, but it's about realizing that okay, it's not the reality you want, it's not the situation you want, but it is what it is. People have got to accept that. It's like, oh, accept your limitations of what you can and can't do. That's fine. Work with what you've got. Don't let it, okay, if you can't do certain things, then do something else in place of that. Don't allow yourself to be you know, bound and controlled and limited. There's always a way that you can do this, and everyone's different. Everyone's got a different approach to this. So, just in terms of liberty, autonomy, and free will, yeah, absolutely. But I think that leads to a maturity of the soul, a maturity of the mind, the ability to take on criticisms, to take on, accept that you can be wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. Everyone gets shit wrong. I get shit wrong all the time. That's how I learn. It's one of the major driving forces. It's like, somebody proves me wrong. It's like, yeah, thank you very much. Next time, I'll have fixed that. So again, brilliant. I'm just gonna.
all right,
I'll let you get on with
so
it. Yeah.
I'll move on to the next slide. Mate, I add to this all the time. by the way, because I'm loving what you've got to add. So I think that's essential. But again, we're talking about covering terms here. We've looked at freedom, and we know that it's part and parcel of what autonomy is. So in terms of an explanation, and again, there's probably other textbook definitions, but freedom leads to autonomy, which is the right or the ability to be independent and govern oneself or one's own activities.
Yeah.
And in smaller case, I've also got it kind of covers independence, self-governance, and sovereignty. So, as the picture kind of demonstrates, freedom leads, it's the staircase that leads to autonomy. And if we want freedom, autonomy needs to be the condition that kind of dictates that, where we are able to act unhindered and to be able to govern oneself. Because if we've got government governing us, we are never going to be free. So this needs to be hammered home as best as possible. I mean, I can provide loads of evidence of why this happens to be the case over some of our presentations. We will never, ever be free if we accept the authority of governance, of government over us. We'll never attain freedom. It's impossible. So this needs to be kind of part and parcel of our future mindset, this mental revolutions, to understand that, hey, we need to give up this. In fact, I'm going to quote a book. We need to give up the dangerous superstition that is government.
Statism, I see. I refer to this as statism and the belief in authority, which I think Larkin Rose largely delves into, is that, it's only got authority because you give you subject yourself to it. You give it the authority, and it will take it gladly. One thing I would add to that as well. Again, sorry to keep chipping in there, but I mean, I agree with you. What you put there, freedom leads to autonomy. I would say that freedom leads to true sovereignty. So again, if you've got a good objective grip on morality, reality, if your brain's balanced and not in any kind of extreme or things like that, what you'll find is that your sovereignty will be your self-governance. You will govern yourself. You can govern your own mind. That is your property. You're born with it. It's nobody else's. It's what you're born with. So self-governance is sovereignty. And what that looks like, once you've got the hang of that, what that is then reflected out as is anarchy. And I'm not on about without rules. I'm on about without rulers, because at the point where you've got, again, maturity, independence, autonomy, self-governance, sovereignty, and you can get that infused within the rest of society so that they are on the same page, we're all operating on the same wavelength, then you don't need rulers. You will operate, you will go out into the world with compassion, with discipline, with consideration for others. The problems will start to disintegrate, but you've got to keep it up. You've got to keep that discipline there, governance, sovereignty. This is freedom. This is true freedom. You will know when you've achieved it, because that will be the outcome.
Right, I'll flick the next slide on. Again, this is the part which kind of needs a little bit of work, because what I've done is used slides from other presentations. So some of this might not be entirely fluid, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But we also need to know, and I mean, this is another founding father, Thomas Jefferson, who stated all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And again, this is part and parcel of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in America. And I'm not saying everything on there and all of these people are massively right, but this is an ancient understanding. I mean, I've just used Thomas Jefferson. There's probably plenty of other people who predated him with this understanding that men are created equal. So if men are created equal, no man or woman has the right to rule over another. So this is things that we need to conceptualize in our minds and have that conviction that if all men were created equal, then how can anybody tell you what to do or how to live your life, especially if you're living a moral life? And that's the important part. We need to firmly grasp and adhere to the governance of rightful morality. Morality is understanding natural law to a good degree, and we need to abide by that. That needs to be our form of governance, is natural law, which hopefully we'll touch upon. Anything to add to that, Nathan, before I move
No,
on?
no. Again, a lot of the founding fathers had a hell of a lot of common sense to add, which again, they put the Declaration of Independence together because they wanted to escape the whole idea of statism. But unfortunately, and inadvertently, they created their own form of statism and fell straight
Yeah.
back into the net. But I think their intentions largely were just and well intentioned. Let's say that. And again, there's a lot of intellectual um, just rationality infused within that particular age. It just seemed to be, it seemed to be heading towards an age of enlightenment, but then I think it was subverted and
Yeah.
unfortunately. But no, I've got nothing really to add to that other than again, it's a good statement, and what greater way to approach things than you have a right to life, liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. And
Exactly.
you would be happy if people wouldn't take from you, if people stop treading on your own rights, if people stop taking your freedoms, stop encroaching on your space, and taking your things and then charging your tax, and if you take all those things out of the equation, there's your pursuit of happiness right there.
Precisely. Yeah. Who doesn't want that? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what everybody should be striving for and hoping to achieve. Well, I'll see if the rest of this comes up.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to bring it back round to, we've had some good slides there. So if you can always return to them at a later point. But if you want to just, I don't know, convince me that, let's say, under the current state of things, protests, petitions. I definitely agree with you on petitions, unfortunately. But explain to the people why that you are convinced that protests are not in our best interests at the minute. And again, whether people disagree with you or not, just listen to what he's got to say. You're entitled to agree or disagree. But you know,
Well, do you know what? While the slides are on the screen, I may as well use that to help put up
yeah,
a relatively convincing argument. And one of obviously I've already explained my background, which was military at a command level. So therefore, I understand principles and principles of warfare and how operations are conducted and how successes can be achieved. So if I know how successes can be achieved, I also how defeat can become imminent. And one of the ways to be defeated is simply by having ineffective tactics, and especially ones that are A, historically weak, and B, that are known to your opponent. So if your opponent knows how you're going to operate,
mm,
they've already got a firm idea what they're going to be up against and how they can combat that objective. So that's what we're doing at the minute. We've already essentially telegraphed our intentions to our very enemy, who have, with an historically weak tactic and provably historically weak tactic, that's had very, very little substantial gains. Certainly at a strategic level, we might get what would be classed as tactical gains, but those tactical gains will be quite often overruled or overridden. So therefore, we've achieved nothing essentially. But as this kind of slide or image shows, the game is rigged. So we're protesting and petitioning. Why? Because the government give us authority to do that. They give us the allowance to do something. Why? Because they know that it works in their favor. They'll always have an edge over us. And I get deeper into this using something called Kohlberg's ethical principles scale, but I think it's probably a bit too complicated without putting graphics on to describe it. But we've got a limited ability to apply what you could say is inferior knowledge. And the result of that is we become the slave. But in terms of occult principles, well, our opponents have got occult knowledge, so therefore they're able to apply superior knowledge, which is why this master slave principle is in effect. That's what we're seeing. Where we've all probably been aware of the term order out of chaos. Well, their order is generated by our chaos. And if we can never, I mean, it's hard to do this without pointing, but we can see the triangular shape there on the screen, and
Yeah.
we'll notice on the dollar bill you've got the flat top pyramid with the all-seeing eye above it. We can never, using the tactics and techniques that we apply, we can never bridge that gap between the flat top pyramid, the flat structure. We can never jump towards the enlightened state, you could say the all-seeing eye, because, as it says, the game is rigged. If we're doing protests and petitions, we are never going to succeed in achieving or bridging that gap. And we need to address that balance by, as I said, having a very different approach to things, by coming to a very more focused understanding based on the occult, and particularly with natural law and objective morality. The one principle of natural law is the law of freedom, which I know you're well aware of, Nathan,
Yeah.
which states essentially that freedom and morality are directly linked. When morality decreases, freedom decreases. But, and this is where it'll work for us, when morality increases, freedom increases. So the simple answer to that is, if we want more freedom, we need to have a more moral society. And there's many ways which we can kind of touch upon that, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, again, essentially that's the solution. People say, "Oh, well, they've got their own solutions." Everyone's no. You might all have your own different versions of what you think might help, but does it go to the root cause of the problem? Because unless it's gone to the root cause, it's not the solution. This, morality directly correlates to freedom. That should tell you something. We have a society that is not free, and I would argue not even polite. Never mind morals. I think politeness has even gone out the window. To such a degree now that even that's frowned upon. We have become so immoral, so degraded as a society it's kind of frowned upon to be decent and virtuous almost.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to add a little bit of my perspective on protests. So again, it's not that I disagree with what you're saying. I mean, effectively, people are again, especially with petitions, you are petitioning, you are asking for permission to go against something. So yeah, petitions. I must have signed, I don't know, 20 over the last couple of years. Really, really heavy issues that have all been passed. We petitioned the government to look at this and to not do that, to not do that, to not do that. Not one single petition that I've signed, that I've put my name to, not one has been successful. And all of these are agenda-based, UN Agenda 2030 based objectives that our government brings in by the day at the minute, and they're pushing them through. And it doesn't matter whether you petition them. Yeah, they might look at the petition. They might even give you a reply if you're lucky. They might say, well, we've looked at it, but sod off. I mean, effectively, that's what they did with the digital IDs. As far as I can tell, and again, I might be wrong, but from what I can hear, what I see on a daily basis, I think there's a 90% push against digital IDs, right? People don't want it. They can see the dangers of it. They can see the encroaching slavery that comes with that. The massive amounts of limitation that comes with that kind of thing. Digital ID is a massive censorship, surveillance, and limitation on everything that you do, think, and say. It's everything, it's a limitation on your behaviors, your online behaviors, your social behaviors. It is completely limiting. So the good thing about that is 90% of people, so far as I can see, don't want it. So that's a massively positive, direction that people take it. But equally, when people signed the petition in the UK, I think it got something like 2.5 million signatures, which is great. That's really good. But they stopped it. They put a stop to it. They closed the petition. So potentially that could have got to 5 and 10 million, right? I mean, again, proof that the government doesn't really care. Their answer is, yeah, well, we've looked at it, but we're going to do it anyway. Well, hang on a minute. Elected representatives, who are you representing? Because it ain't us. We don't want it. So again, with the petitions, I absolutely 100% agree with you, and it's unfortunate. It shouldn't be a case of, they're ineffective, but they are completely ineffective. Personal experience will tell me that. And again, it shouldn't be. We should have, I would say, we should all, have equal rights under, the system to say that if we don't want it, it doesn't go through. But that's not how it works. The good thing about it is they're revealing themselves. They're revealing the game. They're saying, well, you might think it works that way. We don't really care. Our puppet masters and paymasters said that it's going through, therefore it's going through, right? And then so everyone finds a scapegoat and blames, the likes of Keir Starmer, for example. As much as I don't like the man, I think he's a nauseating shit, but he's not the ruler of this country. He's just the puppet master. He's not even the puppet master. He's just the puppet that's been in place to do the job. And he's doing it rather well from their perspective, But protests, on the other hand, and again, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. It is, it's almost like permission to disagree, sir. It's that kind of thing. But the couple of positive things I find out of protesting is, one, it galvanizes people. There's an energy there. Not always, but in most cases, especially the big ones, there's a massive wave of energy that goes through it from start to finish, which is a feeling of unity, a feeling of, being on the same page. It's that, we know what's going on and we don't consent to it. It's a massive show. It's a display, if you like. It's a display of non-consent. It's a display of disagreement, right? So for that, I would say that that's a positive thing. The other thing is, as much as they don't tend to get media coverage, can't imagine why that is. Massive sarcasm, by the way. The people on the sidelines that watch these protests, that read the banners, that read the slogans, that listen to the chants, and there's a lot of them, especially when we were locked down and people needed any excuse they could to come out of their homes. The people on the sidelines were almost as numerous as the people in the protests. And then when they went back indoors and they turned the telly on and watched the mainstream media, they were told that there was 200 people at the protest. There was a small band of dissenters.
Yeah, that's right.
They saw with their own eyes that wasn't true. They are looking now upon the mainstream media, going, well, that's not true because I was stood there. I watched this, and there was millions of them. Or at least I think there was at certain points. So there's that as well. It shows media bias. It shows that people are going to go out and read the slogans. It's going to be like, oh, I wonder if that's true. Okay, there's going to be people that dismiss that. Of course there is. Are the governments ever likely to observe a protest and go, oh yeah, we capitulate? Nah. But that's I've never been under the illusion that will ever happen. Yeah. With one exception. When the nurses were threatened, take the arm spear or lose your job. I was there at that one. And when all the nurses threw their kits into the centre, there was like a square that I think it was a Nelson's Column, Nelson Square or something, and they were throwing all their... in fact, they got me on telly for that one. I was actually they got me on the mainstream for that. But the following day, they announced that actually, okay, they've removed that mandate. They don't have to get the arms spear. So theoretically, that was a success. Maybe, but then again, nothing stops them from U-turning it 6 months down the line when the heat's off them. We've seen them do this numerous times. If they've got an agenda that they're going to push forward, it's like the digital IDs. Apparently now they're rethinking it and they're going to look at other avenues. Well, what they mean is they're going to re-strategize and think of another way to bring it in. In other words, expect a few false flags, perhaps. Expect a few crises to come up. That's like, oh well, now we definitely need him. See, we told you. That's what concerns me. Anyway, back to the protest. Yeah. So again, it's good for galvanizing. It's good for energy. It's good for morale and motivation, and it's good in certain ways to show that the sideline can see what the TV doesn't want them to see. But apart from that. Is it ever going to change the government's mind? No. Are the police ever going to sympathise with the protesters and swap sides? No, I can't imagine that's ever going to happen. The fact that we can get one or two of them to listen is a massive positive step. And I mean, even then, that's nothing in the grand scheme of everything. But I guess if you can get it into one, you can, they might discuss it with their work colleagues. Might be a bit of good coming from there. One of the I did see a slide on you posted it on the Occult Academy Telegram group earlier. A picture of protesters, but it's like they were scanned. Their faces were being scanned, and they would like digitally log
Right.
in. Have you got that
Mhm.
slide at hand?
No, but I could send you that. I guess
Um,
I could.
well,
I haven't.
okay. Well, not for this one, but just to give
Yeah.
people an idea. There are so many CCTV cameras in the UK now. And even the government announced recently that they're going to have they're watching you. They're literally watching specific people on cameras. I mean, that's stalking.
Mhm.
There's another word that goes before that, but I'm going to leave that out for now. But they are stalking people to make sure that they're doing what they're saying to do, to make sure that they're spending their money where they're supposed to be spending it, and they're not engaging in illicit activities and things like that. What the hell right does the government have to stalk people? We were accused of being conspiracy theorists years ago because we knew that they were doing this. The only difference between then and now is they've admitted it. But now instead
Mhm.
of it being a conspiracy theory, it's government policy. When does it stop? And so okay, if we look at it from that perspective, you get on a train and go to London or to Manchester or Liverpool or wherever the protests are being held, you're on camera. You use your card, use train tickets, use even passports now. You're having to show driving licenses, license plates, even they're all being logged. They know where you are. Your phone, your smartphone that you take with you, that is constantly surveilling you. That's listening to everything you say. It's logging it all. The whole thing logs your location, logs your face, logs it's literally geofencing, it's mapping everything that you do. You're telling it. You're telling it, oh, we're going to go there and we're going to protest that, and this is what we think and this is what we feel. And you're giving it to them for free. They know. And even if you don't have your mobile phones with you, guess what? As soon as you arrive at that protest, there's 1,000 cameras looking at you every mile you walk. And now
Yeah.
they've got the ability to profile you. So that I would say is a bad thing. But equally, I don't think that should stop us from doing it. Again, going back to the morale thing and a show, it is a display. Let's be honest about it. A protest is a display of numbers. It's a display of non-consent. That to me, I'll take that. And again, I agree with all your points. I'm not disagreeing with any of it. I think you've made them
Mm.
very, very well. I think I'd be a fool to disagree with them largely. I'm just trying to put an alternative spin on it, if you like. But
Yeah. Well,
you know,
do you know what? I mean, I don't equally, I don't disagree with anything that you said there either. Even though the title of my presentation and some of the slides are quite provocative, and a lot of people will be probably emotionally challenged by some of these sentiments. And as I've said, I'm trying to provoke a mental revolution, and I can't do that by tickling people into
yeah,
understanding certain things. Simply because a lot of the information that we're presenting, Nathan, especially occult levels of information, is massively challenging. We've already got a massive barrier to
yeah.
overcome in the first place. And all we can do is, well, we can provoke people's understanding by, I mean, I'd like to think we're going to add some humor into this and some
I
light-hearted.
think the opening slide had plenty of that. I mean,
Yeah,
what piss?
exactly.
But what was it again?
Uh, why it's something like protests and petitions are piss poor and pitiful.
There you go. There you go. An
It,
injection of
do you know
humor in
what? It is based. There was a little bit of inspiration for this based on a military slogan or statement we had, which was known as the 7 Ps, which is um, proper planning and preparation prevents a piss poor performance. So that was kind of the inspiration behind the title for the presentation to some degree.
I
And
like
as
that.
I've said, yeah, as I've said, I'm trying to be a little bit provocative, and
Mhm.
any readers of the Occult Academy will realize that many of the things I've put are very provocative. Again, this isn't because I've got a personal dislike for anybody. I'm not trying to challenge any particular group or mindset. However, I'm trying to provoke a reaction so we can fundamentally align ourselves to some very challenging information that's going to ultimately upset our sensibilities and rationales and our mindset. There's no easy way to do that, as I'm sure you know, Nathan.
Yeah.
Where we, I mean, we've contributed. I've contributed to a book which is called that. I mean, that's going to be immediately challenging to many people in the truth
Oh,
community.
it is.
But
I've had a
again,
fair bit of feedback for it as well. So,
yeah,
I'll go into that a little bit actually. But
yeah, sure. But I agree with what you've said about protests massively. I don't dispute that at all. I've been to many protests, but
yeah,
I'm under no illusion, just as you are, that this isn't a a, a one solution that's going to magically make government go away. We need
yeah.
this to be engaged to make government go away by believing out of existence and then taking the appropriate actions to do so. And I'll be quite honest, I think in the future, there might be physical repercussions to I'm going to say, a potential rebellion. There's going to be some sort of revolution or rebellion that will undoubtedly happen. And I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be violent, but it wouldn't surprise me, especially in America, if there is some sort of civil type war, unrest rather, which involves violent clashes. I'd be surprised if that doesn't happen personally. I,
Yeah.
this probably won't happen in the UK simply because, well, unless you've got battle rifles, you know, unless you've got a stockpile of pitchforks, we are pretty much doomed to well, if we've got to make this work on the mental plane because we ain't got the physical ability to fight back. And I mean, if any listening viewers or members of the listening audience understands morality and natural law, we are very much fundamentally well within our rights morally to react using force against the violent aggression that's being forced upon us.
Which
It,
comes under the principle of self-defense. Again, this is a
yeah,
natural law of God-given right. And again, I've got to be careful because I'm not advocating for anyone to break any laws. So, we've got to put that out there for our own um, welfare, I
protection.
guess. But, at the same time, you do have that right to protect your own sovereignty. That belongs to you. If somebody's attacking you, why shouldn't you have the right to defend it? If somebody's taking your stuff, why don't you have the right to prevent that?
Yeah.
Can we put us back on the screen? I'll let you do it because I don't want to bloody put myself on and just me like the previous podcast. I don't know what the hell happened with that one.
Or, what, as in terms of our two images, is
Yeah,
that
just
not
yeah,
out?
just yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I've still got the
right.
slide on there.
Oh, have you? I was going to say I've got the picture of us two. So
Oh right,
I'll
okay. Oh, there we
take the
go.
sharing off. Yeah. All right.
There
Obviously,
we go.
yours, what you see is different to what I see. So
All right.
yeah.
Well,
Okay, mate.
well, I found that. So for anyone who watches the previous podcast, our episode number one, they're going to see my unfortunate display here, and only mine,
Ah,
because Steve's a voice in the ether somewhere coming through. Thankfully, the audio comes through quite well, but
no.
for reasons I don't understand, it was just me on the screen. Just before we end this particular episode, you've just mentioned something there about being deliberately provocative. Right. So let's deal with this because I get accused of doing this as well. I mean, in fact, I've been accused by a few people of being deliberately provocative by putting a group together called the Occult Academy, by putting a channel together called the Occult Academy. Is it deliberately provocative? Yeah, it is. It is because what the reason for that? It's not. I don't want to piss people off. I want to nudge them. I'm using their words now. I want to nudge them. I want to get them to think, bring it back into balance, right? If I can provoke you into looking into something through either anger or frustration, and you then just peer into it, or somebody shows you it, and then you get the opposite effect of what you're expecting, and
Mm.
you come out of it with a different perception, job done. Steve's job is done. So we're not being provocative because we hate you. We're not being provocative because we are trying to stir people up, at least not in that way. We are being provocative because we need your attention. We need your focus. And we need you to do something with it. We need you to understand the information that we're providing you with, that other people are providing you with. It's not just us doing the work. There's plenty of people out there. It's not a bad thing. It's equally, I get told from certain people, not everyone, that we are quite negative or doomy and black-pilled, and you know, okay, I mean, a fair few people have actually said I'm black-pilled. Yeah, I am black-pilled to a large degree, and what I mean by that is I've took so many red pills, I can see reality so clearly now from a bird's eye view that I'm just going, well, that's obvious. It's very clear to me, right? And so, you know, and it's frustrating to me, and as I'm sure it's frustrating to you and many others, when you can see a situation clearly because you've done the research, because you've done the investigations, because you've understood the information, because you've understood the knowledge that's been placed there, and you can apply that when you look out on it. Yeah, it is frustrating because it's like we're 10 steps ahead and we need everyone else to come up to that. I'm not saying I'm a genius or anything like that. Same way I don't have any type of ego attachment into this other than, we've got a job to do. We've got the work, we've got this information. It's time to spread it. It's time to add to the cause, if you like. We can't do that if people's minds remain closed. If people go in with an existing bias, if they go in with existing beliefs and ideologies that they're unwilling to negotiate with, if they're unwilling to challenge, if you can't challenge your own beliefs and ideologies, you've already lost. They've got your mind. You belong to them. You belong to the rulers, to the authorities, to the state, to your religious priests. They have your mind. Dispense, and again, this is a theme that I go into in Fake Awake, and I think I've labeled it quite a lot. Dispense with your beliefs. Belief is the enemy of knowing. I would rather know something, whether it's good or it's bad or it's joyful or it's miserable. It doesn't matter. The truth is the truth. If you're a truth seeker, you seek the truth, right? It doesn't matter what it is. You're just seeking the truth, and you've got to accept it when you find it. Challenge it by all means. Look for alternatives by all means. Try and change it if you don't like it. But until you can grasp reality as an objective thing that you are dealing with, then you've already lost your mind. Your mind belongs to them. You know, my advice, I guess, to end this particular episode is stop thinking the way they want you to think. Stop assuming that you know things. Stop Dunning-Krugering yourself. Stop thinking that you're experts when you're not. Nobody's an expert, especially the likes of you and I, Steve. We've got to figure this shit out for ourselves, and it's hard. It's a hard uphill battle constantly. And then all we're trying to do is, like, when you get so far up the hill, it's like, right, okay, can you pass this information down a little bit so so that they can use it to their advantage, so we can all go through this together. We can unify. We've got some kind of cohesion that we can go forward with, because if we are all separate, if we're all divided on this, oh, I've got my own solution, I've got my own opinion, I've got my own belief, mine's right and you're wrong, me. Okay, well, we can continue to do that, and we can continue to get nowhere with it, because that's pretty much, we've stagnated as a movement, as a freedom movement, as a truth movement. We have stagnated. I don't want to see it stagnate. There are a lot of good minds. There are a lot of good people in this movement. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of psyops thrown in there. Again, we've read the seven psyops in Fake Awake that I've gone into in great depth, and I've explained why it's a psyop, how it works. People don't like it, but I've had people come back to me and said, right, I never saw it that way. I've read your book. I even had one guy I was on with. I think it was Rise Above, and there was a guy in chat, and he was quite hostile to me, at first, which is fair enough. He's entitled to his opinions. Anyway, during the show, he actually sent me an email, and he said, "Mate, I've misjudged you." And since then, he's communicated with me quite a lot, and he seems like a really decent guy, and he's open to a lot of the stuff. He's read the book, he's given me a lot of feedback, and his opinions have changed because he's challenged his own beliefs. He's challenged his own position within what he thinks he knows, and that's all I'm trying to do. Is if we can get people to take that position, to just challenge themselves, that is critical thinking. To be critical of your own thinking, right? That is the meaning of it, the definition of it. I feel like I'm on a spiel here, but I watch a lot of YouTube videos that I disagree with. I'll watch a lot of people on, who debunk conspiracy theories. Oftentimes they're right, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they make a good argument even when they're not right, But I'm willing to look at that and say, right, what can I learn from that? What can they learn from that? I mean, some of them are really, really intellectual. Some of them are, entertaining even. And I'll give them a like for watching the video, even if I disagree with them, because I'm learning from that. And so if I'm learning from that, it's valuable. It's valuable to me, and then I can pass it on. That's
Yeah.
so I'm going to my closing statement. I'll give you a closing statement as well, mate. But my closing statement from today is that, you know, there are positives to be gained from every negative situation. We can, you know, as much as this is tough, it's when times are tough that you learn the most. It's when you're challenged the most that your brain, your behaviors are forced to change. You're forced to go autonomous. You're forced to learn new skills. You have to do this stuff, and if you don't want to do it willingly, you'll be pushed into it, you know, by default. There's a lot of stuff to learn out there. And it starts within. Dispense with your beliefs. And over to you, Steve, at that.
Right, nice one. You know, I take on board all the points that you've made, and particularly appreciate what you've mentioned during the presentation. But in terms of closing points, we are just literally starting here. I know this is only
Mhm.
sort of the second outing for us as our Occult Academy podcast series. There's a big boatload of information, and as I've said, we are, and I'm putting my military kind of stance on here. We can win this battle. We are
Yeah.
not there yet. There's work and education to be done. We can win this. I'm confident of it. I knew this in 2019 that the outcome was going to be positive, will be, and it can be positive, but it can't be unless we put in the work and effort and the determination and get the balance right. In order to do that, we need to be strategically better than our opponents. I've been on their side of the fence. I understand how they work. They're very, very, very organized, logical. They're very methodical.
Yep.
We have to be comparable to that. We can't just assume that this is in the bag just because we are in the right and they are not. It doesn't work that way. And we understand the way the universe, Nathan, because we've studied the occult long enough to come to the clear understanding how this battle space works. We need to get above that, and the way to do that is by having the superior knowledge. It's as simple as that. We need the superior knowledge. We need to understand the occult concepts, especially as we've mentioned, natural law and objective morality. Once we know that, the answers become clear. All the points that we make will become established because it will become obvious and logical. After that, there's no stopping the outcome. So,
Yeah.
uh, if it might not sound positive to a lot of people, well, okay, but we're at war. War's never always going to be a positive thing. We just need to be of the right mindset. And I get that it's going to be quite complicated for some people
Yeah.
to be upbeat and positive when there's so much negativity going on all around us. Okay, but you know, I'm hopeful. Keep watching these podcasts. I think we'll get a lot of information across, more presentations. We'll promote our book more and some of the aspects
Yeah.
that this touches upon, and also our presentation channel, the Occult Academy. I'll see if I can put a link into that, Nathan, if that's possible.
Brilliant. Yeah, just one more thing. I know I've given my statement, but you know, insofar as the negativity thing, again, this is something that I've been accused of for years, and then I'll get other people say, you're not negative. You know, why? I don't know. I'll put that on the screen. Hold on. You know, why are you being accused of being negative? I mean, when I'm around you and you know Christine and certain other people, you know, we have a laugh. We get together. We live. We don't sit there and doom monger all day.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, we get together. We have some good times, and it's quite. It's you know, it's very effective. Um, uh, but equally, I do know people who sit on their phones all day and doom scroll, and of course their moods are going to plummet, and I've seen it over and over again. So, well, yeah, okay, stop doom scrolling then. But in terms of this whole negativity thing, I mean, you know, the more you tell somebody that they're negative and that they're doing things wrong, then chances are they're going to probably reinforce that because they're going to get to such a point where they're going to be sick of hearing it. It'll make them negative. They're not going to dare say anything. They're not going to dare voice their opinions. You know, I got into that mindset where it's like, oh, you're so negative, and so when you're in a group of people who are false positive, and that's exactly what they are, by the way. You know, they're not
Yeah.
love and light; they just pretend to be. They've got a misconception around it.
Mhm.
Not very helpful to those who are struggling. Stop having a go at people who you perceive as negative. But perhaps it's because we can see what we're up against, and we see the importance of it. And that's it. Doesn't mean we're doom mongers. Doesn't mean that we're steadfast and stale and stagnant people who just ad nauseum throwing things out there. There's a point to this.
Mhm.
Sometimes the information isn't very nice, but I'd rather know what it is. Again, it goes back to this whole truth-seeking idea. I'd rather know the truth than be presented with a false deception, a false reality. Right. While I'm doing that, how on earth do I put that on the screen? What have you
Well,
given me? So
if it's not doable, we can always address that on a later time. But
yeah, let's have a look because
um,
I've got chat preview in there. I don't know how to. I'll figure it out for the next, hopefully for the next one, because at the minute I haven't got a clue how to do that.
yeah, or we could maybe just put it in the notes or the links, before it goes on social
Yeah,
media.
I mean, again, I mean, I know Telegram's notoriously difficult to find things on, but if anybody listening is interested in joining the Occult Academy, it's free. There's no subscription, there's no memberships, there's no adverts on there, there's nothing. It's just free flow of information. Everyone's welcome. Just be civil, so you can probably find it if you just type in the Occult Academy. Um, Likewise, if you search for me or Steve on Telegram, you'll probably find there's about another six of us. Or, but probably I don't know. But we're on there. Equally, once these videos are uploaded and start to get a bit of traction, comment. I'm terrible with emails, but Steve's fantastic. So you hopefully get a reply from one of us. So you're prolific, and I'm like, oh God, do I have to reply? I'm terrible. I do apologize to people who have emailed me. I will reply. I've just had a lot going on. So there you go. It's a piss poor excuse, but it's the truth. But there you go. Um, Anything else you want to add to that before we call it a day, mate?
No, it's a wrap, I guess.
It's
Thanks
a
for
wrap.
tuning in.
There you go. So again, thanks to everybody who's watched. I mean, please do subscribe, do all of do the fluff, like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff, which I feel a bit dirty for saying, but it does work. Equally, I'm going to give somebody else. I'm going to give two more people a shout out actually, because the pair of us, Steve and I, are frequent guests on the Eric Von Essex YouTube show and the Eric Von Essex Rumble show. So we quite often appear on there. If you want to pop over to that. It's live on Rumble on a Sunday and YouTube on a Monday from 8 p.m. usually to about 11ish. Equally, we also appear on another show, the Paul English Live Show, which again you can find that on a variety of media. Always an entertaining, busy topic of conversation. I mean, there's always a roaring conversation on there. You'll find us on there quite often, probably in the chat, even if we're not on live as the guests. Both very well worth tuning into, even if it's just for a bit of entertainment, bit of information, or do what Steve and I do is just spam the chat. I guess it's fun. Anyway, right. So that's it. Thank you for watching episode 2 of the Occult Academy with Steve James and myself, Nathan Lucius, and we'll hopefully see you on the next one. There'll be plenty more presentations coming up as well. There you go. Food for everyone. Thank you very much.